March 15th, 2023. This is the S&P 500 E-Futures Mini 2000 tick chart on the thinkorswim platform. This is what the chart looked like today. You probably go down to the descriptions below to see the timestamp where I took my trades and where I saw, or I think I saw setups. This is what the chart looked like today. In the pre-market, it sold off. There was one kind of news catalyst, which happened around 5:30, which was the core PPI, Producer Price Index. And it looked like it just kind of made the market a little choppy, but overall the trend was down. This could have been a number of factors, but I think everybody's attributing it to more bank failure dramas. So I found kind of two trading ranges, one here, and then later in the day, one up here. This is what my chart looked like. And I took one trade today, it's green. Let me just kind of clear that out. So this is a little bit hard to determine the exact trading range because I actually had this trading range playing with this trading range at one time, and then I also had potentially this trading range because it looked like it touched down here from the pre-market and touched over here. And then later it looked like this one was the more dominating one. So I was actually playing this one first because it touched, up here pretty nicely. And I adjusted it because it originally was down here. Then when it exceeded, I dragged it up here. And at one time I had it up here, but I didn't like it. So I kind of brought it back down to here so it contacted this a little bit more. And then when these formed, I kind of dragged it right back up to here. It's the same views down here because originally I had it up here where my gray crosshairs are, cursors. And then when it broke out below, I kind of dragged it a little bit lower and then came down to here, settled on here because it looked like it was kind of getting some good confirmation. And then later in the day when it touched two more times, I left it there. But then when it broke down here, I just decided to create a second set just in case, just to see if there's any kind of reaction here. And then there are also mini consolidation trading ranges all over the place. Then later in the day when it broke out and it looked like it was for sure kind of playing its own new trading range here, I had the same thing where I thought maybe the trading range was kind of where my crosshair, the horizontal line was, as well as down here. And that's where I kind of looked for some guidance. But then when it broke down a second time, then I dragged the lower leg down here. And when it broke up past this up here, I dragged it up to here. So I'm going to go through the trades. This is pre-market. There was one big trend channel going down. Then it looked like it consolidated here. This guy doesn't exist yet. And I just didn't really see any trades, but I also don't trade the pre-market. Then when regular hours opened, it looked like it created this trend channel going up. I didn't see any good setups at the moment. EMA is holding. Trades up. Kind of comes back down. And here I kind of established this support line on the bottom, and I just drew a resistance up here to potentially see if there was a trading range. Looks like it's violating, so this wasn't really holding that well. Goes up. Kind of comes back down, and then it goes back into another trend channel, goes down, and this is where I saw the first potential setup. So you could say there's like a new low here, first entry short, and then maybe a second entry short way up here. I was considering that, but actually this trading range wasn't really established yet because the highest high that I took at the time was here. And it looked like it violated, and maybe it's going to. So when it was like where my crosshairs are, about right there, when it broke out and came back down, it could have been a failed breakout, but I did see it, but I didn't want to do anything with it. I just wasn't 100% sure. But then I do see this setup here. There's a new low, first entry short, second entry short. I thought this might have been a possible trade because the EMA is holding prices down. At this point, I do have this trend channel working down. So there are technically two key entry points here. The signal bar is bearish, but I just wasn't sure if it was going to come back down to here and bounce. So it looks like there's about enough room for a scalp, but I just didn't. I didn't feel that it was a trade for me. I just wanted to see a little bit more. Just wasn't quite ready for that trade. Prices continue chopping. It goes in this trading range and it breaks out. I draw this channel going up. It makes a first break, tries to go up higher once. It looks like it kind of pulls back temporarily. Like tries to go higher once, making the extreme here, pulls back, and then it shoots all the way back up here. I see a potential second trade here. There's a pretty decent signal bar. Now it broke out of this channel and made a new extreme. So I'm thinking, okay, there's at least 2 clean legs up. It might be trying to correct now. I don't know if it's going to reverse, but it looks like it might correct. But I saw it. There's enough room to the EMA, but I just wasn't 100% sure of it. I thought, okay, if there's a lower high, I might want to take it. But by the time you get a lower high, which is about right here, like at 7:10, it's about like, this is at 7:07. It's about 3 minutes away. It looked like there was just kind of, if I took the lower high here, it looks like it's already running into the EMA. And so there wasn't enough room to come back down. So it's just a setup that would have worked. Waiting for the confirmation never came. Well, it came, but it didn't really set up nicely. So ended up not having a good trade or not taking a trade. Prices continue moving down. I see another setup here, which is a new low here, first entry short, second entry short. So this second entry short it's not the best signal bar because this is technically the signal bar, and once it breaks one tick below, it becomes the second entry short. Now, I think I had this drawn as a resistance, but I wasn't 100% sure of it yet. Now, I also had, I think, this at one time up here, and it was like an overshoot, then I later dragged it back down to there. And I just didn't think it was enough room. If I took a short, I'd probably put it one tick back, but I just wanted a little more room, more breathing room to the EMA because the EMA is pointing up at that point. So I skipped that trade. Prices continue, now it's chopping down. Turned out it would have worked. Maybe with more experience, I'll be able to read these a little bit better in real time and understand the context more. But at this point, I'm still not quite there yet. So I'm okay letting trades that I don't fully understand pass me by. Prices continuing down. Now I do have this bottom of the channel now, so I can kind of have a reassurance that, okay, it's probably trading within this channel. So it makes this new low. So that's kind of where I drew my first. So I originally had this maybe a little bit lower, but then I dragged it up to here thinking, okay, there's at least 2 touches. Maybe these are 2 small overshoots. And then I like that this is kind of some good confirmations here. Granted, there's some overshoots here as well. And at that point, I kind of created 2 trading ranges, one touching the bottom here, because perhaps this will come into play. And the second one, same top, but all the way down to here. So prices kind of move up. I was wondering if it's going to touch this top of the trend channel, or is it going to break through? Kind of moves up, breaks out. It kind of consolidates in its own trading range, and then it moves a second time. I did see there's 2 measured moves up, 2 small legs, one up to here, pulls back, a second one. But then I also said there could potentially be just one big leg here, which would be captured by this trend channel. So I drew this one up, and then I copied it and put it here. And I thought if it comes all the way back up to here, it might reject because this is also the top of this trading range and top of the second trading range that I've just kind of said this might be something to be watchful for. Prices continue moving up, and then it corrects down. EMA is holding, which is interesting. It's good. Now it's getting close to the top. So here, I'm wondering, is it going to break through or is it going to bounce back down? It bounces back down, touches the EMA. So I'm kind of, okay, well, I don't see a setup yet. Breaks down below the EMA and it comes back up. So now it's whippy. It's going below and above. So I just thought, okay, just continue being patient. You know, you're not experienced enough to get a good read on what's going to happen next. Just wait. Prices continue chopping. And it creates this second leg. So I see one leg down, second leg down, and then one push up. You can say there's 2 pushes up to complete, you know, this one leg up. And then it comes down. I saw, okay, maybe there's another measured move here. So I drew this guy and then I copied it. When I made this new low, I kind of placed it here for now just to see where it would go. Prices continue moving up, and now it actually makes that second measured move. So when I first saw this, I thought, okay, what am I looking at? If this is a new low, it could be a first entry short, pulls up. There's a potential second entry short. It's also hitting the top of this trading range. So I thought, okay, this is actually a pretty decent potential trade here because if failed breakout, there's enough room for the EMA. I got my order ready, but I didn't execute it yet because when this candle was forming, it opened up here, and I thought, okay, it could continue breaking up because it might want to complete the measured move on this guy. So I waited, and when it broke up and it started going down to where I would have put in my entry, which is one tick here, it never really quite came back. So when I dropped my order in, at that time I was late to the game and it was kind of dancing around here already, and closed down here. When it closed down here, I knew the scalp for sure was already made. I don't want my order sitting up here in case it flashes up or just continues to bounce up. So unfortunately, this was a missed trade because it was nice that it had two clean legs up on its own little mini measured move. The signal bar is like okay. If it closed way down here, then I would have just like dropped in my order immediately. But since it closed kind of in the middle point, I wanted to see what would happen on this candle. And waiting for this candle to kind of tell me or give me more direction was definitely what caused me to miss the trade. But that's okay because I'd rather know and just be more careful than just jumping in too early because there's no guarantee it went down this way. As I said, it could have just gone up and tested this measured move. But in this case, I thought and I wasn't quite accurate. So, I missed out on this trade. Turns out it would have been like decent. And I also probably would have gotten a decent runner. But I wasn't on it, so that's okay. So then I saw, okay, there might be another measured move here. So I drew this guy down to the first very visible swing here. Swings back up, and then I copied it and put it right here, thinking, okay, it might come back down to here, get to this low of this trading range. And when it does, just be ready, potential bounce. Because up until this point, the trading range isn't the most cleanest, right? I mean, it's touching pretty much the same areas up here 4 times, which is good. But on the bottom, it's a little unclear because it could actually be, kind of be up here where my cursor is, kind of cutting across here. But, it could also be down here, which is what I had. Or it could also be even lower to touch twice here, which that's how kind of this overlapping trading range. So on the bottom side, I'm not as confident. On the top, I was a little more confident because the overall bias was down. It's in this trading range. It's making these pretty big moves. It doesn't confirm consistently on the bottom, but at the top, it's pretty consistent. So anytime it's going down, looking for a bounce, I'm a little more careful just because I'm not sure where exactly the bottom is, but I'm pretty firm in understanding where the top is. Prices continue moving. Now here I do see a second entry short. So this is first entry short, second entry short. Now I thought this was a possible trade. However, I wasn't 100% sure. I created this descending trend channel going down, and it is 2 key entry points. I saw that, but what concerned me was even though this is a new low, first entry short, second entry short on the count, I don't know, or I wasn't sure if this could all just be grouped as one big new low. And so it'd just be one move up, first entry short. You kind of negate this guy, right? I was thinking that, in which case it might bounce back up a little bit higher, then make a second entry short. So when I first saw this, that's what kind of threw me off a little bit. But in hindsight, after the move had happened, I thought about it again. I said, well, actually, it kind of confirmed this a third time. It closed below the EMA. This is potentially a trade that I should have taken. It was kind of there. It had 2 key entry points. It had enough room to get back down to here. It's worth a shot. Plus, this candle is, well, it's kind of rare, but the last few days, the candles have been huge. So this candle here is a little bit more manageable. It's about 2.5 points. So it's a little more manageable than, say, taking some of these entries up here, which are really big candles. Turns out it would have worked. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to wait. Then I see this lower high. I thought, okay, well, lower high, kind of might be confirming the second entry short. On top of this lower high, you could interpret it as, if I did it the first time, this is the new low, first entry short. Now it's potentially a second entry short setting up. So on top of that, even though this is the local low, I thought there's enough room to get down to here and potentially move all the way down to here, which would be this lower part of this trading range, which as I mentioned before, I wasn't 100% sure where the low of the trading range was because it wasn't as consistent as the high. But I went ahead and took the trade, put 1 tick below this guy. It failed me, and I also took out my core profit right there, and all I had was a runner. I just trailed the runner 1 tick above each subsequent candle. Now, I didn't want to be too ambitious, just kind of having it up here and thinking it's going to make a big run, simply because it already bounced off the top and came down. Had I had some kind of trade up here, and let's say I took my trade up here and it got my core, I might have been more optimistic and kept my runner stop up here and wait for a complete swing, then move it to here. Once this completes, maybe move it down to here once this completes, and once this completes, move it from here down to here and just keep dragging it, but a little bit lower. But since this is kind of near the localized low, I was a little more aggressive in making sure my stop is more tight, just because I don't think, I don't know if there's much more momentum to keep pushing it down. So I was able to get a scalp out and get my runner. I think got stopped out right here. So it's pretty good trade. Then it continues moving up. Prices. I have this trading range. I think might be a localized one. I actually had this a little higher at one time, but then it broke out, and I thought, okay, when it consolidated here, that's when I dragged it to the bottom here, moved up, kind of breaks out, comes back in. So it's potentially be a failed breakout, but there's no setup because it's a new low, first entry short. That's all you get. It's technically a second entry short here, but this is a bad signal bar. Prices continue moving down. And I do see, okay, this may be considered a new low, first entry short, second entry short, but I don't like the looks of this signal bar and this trigger bar. Signal bar closed above the EMA. It's not that clean because it actually closed up here. And this one had the power all the way back down. And when this guy closed, it actually closed also above the EMA. So I just didn't like this setup at all. So then I do see this second entry long right here. So when this price is moving, it said like, okay, first entry long, and then potentially a second entry long. So now, in the context of things, it broke through my original main trading range, and now it's going through and testing the bottom of the secondary trading range. So that's leaving me a little confused. It's like broke past this guy, and now it's breaking past this guy. So is this valid? Is this a valid trading range, or is it actually even lower, making the new lows here? All that added together made me just pause and think, okay, there's enough room to the EMA. It made two measure moves down. It has two things going for it. It could be bouncing off of this trading range, and it made a measure move. The thing that's going against it is its counter trend, because this is all going, excuse me, let's go back here. It's going counter trend. It's going counter trend because main bias is going down. It could be breaking out and coming back in, but it's just kind of these conflicting beliefs that I couldn't quite fully, I guess, reconcile. And I felt like I might be picking the bottom, which sometimes it'll work, but I didn't feel good enough that this was truly a bottom to come back up. So I left that trade alone. Turns out it would have worked, and then it hits the EMA. Now, it bounces around the EMA. EMA is rejecting, comes back up, and then sweeps back up. So now I see another setup here. So you actually have a new low, first entry short, second entry short, and then you can consider this a sets recounts. Then you have first entry short, second entry short, but you also have first entry long, potential second entry long. So this is actually, I thought, a pretty good trade. Unfortunately, I missed out on it because it's a good signal bar in both cases. Good signal bar for going long, and it's a good signal bar for a failed second entry short, because if there's a new low, first entry short comes up, second entry short breaks down. This is where the second entry short's confirmed. It comes down and it breaks up. So if it ticks above here, then it's going to be a fully confirmed failed second entry short. And if it breaks above here, it'll be a confirmed second entry long. On top of that, this candle is a little bit bigger than I'd like, because it's about 2.5, actually 3.5 points. It's a little bit bigger, but it's also being held by the EMA. And one thing I wasn't sure of, if this trading range is it in the middle of the trading range, kind of like it's this midline. So in which case would it go up or would it go down? But in hindsight, I thought, maybe this is actually a pretty decent trade to have taken, or at least take a risk on, because it did confirm this bottom of the trading range, the big one, and it bounced up. You can also look at it as a big visual first entry short. If you neglect this one, move down, second entry short, and second entry short, it closed above the EMA, could be a failure. So all that's going through my mind. I just wasn't sure, but now I have seen something like this. It kind of keeps my brain more aware, because if you take it here, there's enough room to get the scalp out, and that's exactly what would have happened. And then it actually would have kept going. So unfortunately, I missed that trade, and I thought this was actually a pretty decent setup, but that's okay. I'll just keep an eye out for more similar setups like that in the future. Then it kind of goes into trading range again. I don't see any real setups that I like. It consolidates and then it breaks out. There are, some second entries, but I don't consider them really high probability with the chart that I saw. Breaks out. I saw kind of two semi-measured moves because I saw one leg up, two legs up, but it's all part of this big channel. So I didn't really take a trade or get a trade ready. Once it broke out, I thought, okay, maybe it might test this extreme, but it's also fighting against this trading range. So it hit this top of the trading range and came right back down. So it wasn't going to make a new high. Sitting on hands, just watching. It's really getting choppy. I do see this second entry long, because if you count this as new high, first entry long, potential second entry long also bounced off this bottom of the trend trading range. But I just kind of wanted a little bit better signal bar because it looks very neutral. So when the next candle forms, now even though it confirms that it's a second entry long, I don't want to take any entry way above here because it is running into the EMA. It is at the bottom of the trading range. So I just kind of didn't feel that comfortable with that potential entry, but it ends up it would have worked. I mean, it would have worked all the way back up to the top. Had this candle, if it was bearish, still kind of had a little bit more, meat up at the top, or if it ideally closed bullish, kind of like a little hammer candle, then I would have had my entry here most definitely. But this one was like, I guess, semi-high probability, but not fully high probability in my view or per my count. So unfortunately, I missed that trade. Prices continue moving up, stays within this channel. Now it for sure broke out of this trading range. So now I'm watching carefully. It's like, okay, is it just going to be moving up completely? And at this time, I have this top of the resistance drawn. And the midline here is actually a little bit, I actually had this bottom of the trading range kind of right here at one point. And I was just watching carefully thinking, okay, it might be respecting, it breaks out below, failed breakout, comes up, it's touching it again. At this point, it kind of made this double bottom. So then I said, okay, maybe it's actually slightly lower. Maybe it's actually right here. And, you could say there's a new high, first entry long, second entry long, but this isn't a very good signal bar. This is a better signal bar. And when it breaks up, you're running into the EMA. Even though EMA is flat, you might not have to respect it. But at that point, I wasn't sure if it's potentially a failed breakout, because if the trading range is right here, then you could treat it as a failed breakout. But I drew it and I thought maybe it's actually down there. And so I just kind of sat on my hands. Prices continue moving. It's within the trading range now. It's respecting it. These are tiny, tiny bars going back and forth. And now breaks out of the trading range again. It comes back in. So I thought, okay, maybe this is a failed breakout again. Now it's moving up. It's chopping around. It comes up to this guy. So I saw this as a new low, first entry short, second entry short. And I didn't take this trade. In hindsight, I think this is possibly a pretty decent trade to have taken, because it's just right here. It's potential fail breakout if you had your trading range actually right a little bit lower. But I already drew it up to here because I don't like this many overshoots toward the beginning of my trading range. But I could have just treated this as the trading range might have actually started at this point, but I didn't. And so this is actually, I think, a decent entry to have taken, and it would have worked. Fortunately, I wasn't on it. Prices continue moving down, chops around. Now it goes all the way down here. Now when it made this double bottom, I thought, okay, maybe this trading range actually is lower. So the trading range seems to be evolving as we go, just to see if there's a new trade setup. So I kind of drew it down to here. It's kind of overlapping with the top of this old big trading channel. So when it bounced here, I wasn't ready for it, but there was a potential fail breakout and second entry long, because you can count this one big leg, first entry long, second entry long. It's a pretty good signal bar. Now this fail breakout is with regards to the original bottom of the trading range up here. Thought, okay, maybe there's a fail breakout, but I wasn't ready for that trade, and it's a pretty decent signal bar, enough room to the EMA. I should have taken it, but I don't think I was just mentally sharp to see it. It would have worked out. And the prices just continue chopping, and then it's getting toward the end of the day, and it chops breakdown below, and again, kind of the last 5 minutes of the day, you get this crazy price action. It happens similarly to what happened yesterday, but I wasn't going to trade it at that point because I don't want to risk it, because even though I did this twice in a row, that's enough times to make you think it's going to happen a third time. So tomorrow, if I see this, I want to be careful and not think like, oh, it's going to do it again, jump in the last 5 minutes and it flashes on me. So that's how I saw the charts today. Kind of interesting, two double trading range day. Price action didn't really move that much, all things considered, but there was a lot of action happening in this like little consolidated area. So hopefully that was helpful.